I'm Angela Yore.
And I'm Lynda Clarke, and welcome to Why We Lead, the podcast that delves into the stories and insights of impactful leaders
and unsung heroes shaping the Fintech world and beyond.
Hello and welcome. I'm Angela Yore. Today we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with a truly remarkable guest, Lord Christopher Holmes, Baron Holmes of Richmond, MBE. Chris has had an extraordinary career, one marked by resilience, achievement, and a deep commitment to positive change. Originally from Kidderminster, he excelled academically and was a passionate sportsman, particularly in swimming. At the age of 14, he faced a significant challenge when he lost his sight. But rather than letting it hold him back, he turned adversity into strength, propelling himself forward with even greater determination. He went on to graduate from King's College, Cambridge, with a master's in political science and social sciences, all while becoming one of Britain's most decorated Paralympians. Over the course of his sporting career, he won an incredible 9 gold medals, 5 silver and 1 bronze. Following his success in sport, Chris transitioned into law and politics, and in 2013, he was appointed a life peer. Since then, he has been a leading advocate for disability rights, equality, financial inclusion, and digital innovation, all driven by a passion for public good. Chris Holmes is a true champion in every sense of the word, and I can't wait to dive into his incredible journey.
Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on today.
Complete pleasure. Lovely to be here.
So, my first question to you is, let's just go straight for a deep conversation here. Why do you lead? And what does leadership mean to you, Chris?
By the very nature of being born human, we all have a leadership role to play. And probably I was fortunate enough to realise that through being on the Great Britain swimming team from the age of 14 and a half. And that really taught me the sense that there are obvious leaders, the team captain, the performance director, but the reality that all of us at some stage, whatever we're involved in, we all have a leadership role to play. And I guess by learning it in my teens, it was really fortunate because it enabled me to understand the difference we can make when we lead, how leadership is about bringing people together, developing consensus, having an inclusive style, and then the potential good that we can deliver through doing that has to be the reason why we're here.
Absolutely. And I love the fact, it's all about developing consensus, because often people think leadership skills is about being the loudest in the room. But actually, that's not the case at all, is it?
Completely not. And I was similarly fortunate to be elected as the team captain when I was just 18 years old. And in many ways, what did I know about leadership then? I had to very much learn as I went along, but the learning came from listening, from understanding that I had a group of people there whose mission was pretty clear: to try and deliver the best performance they could, both individually and collectively as a team. So having that understanding enabled me to think, well, this isn't a leadership role that's just down to me. I have to make all the decisions. I have to decide how we do this, what we do, when we do it. It's about bringing all of that knowledge, all of that experience from all the other teammates to bear. And one of my first sort of concepts was really having team meetings where everybody had a voice and we need to hear everybody's voice. I really wanted everybody to speak, to contribute. So everything that we did, every plan that we made, every sense of how we were going to approach each competition, everybody had to speak and say what they wanted, how they felt about it. And only through that could we have that really connected, that really total team approach to leadership.
And you must have, from a very young age, been used to dealing with pressure. So, you had the collective of the team as a backbone as well. But it seems to me, for all your life, that you've been in pressurized, crucial situations. How did you deal with that from such a young age? And actually, why were you attracted to those environments?
I was attracted to the sporting environment in the first instance because I just love sport from an early age, doing it, watching it, having been lucky enough to try and compete at a whole host of different sports, and then swimming just happened to come through and be the one that I could really pursue to a reasonable level. But that sense of performance, being able to test yourself, to really get a sense of what I was capable of in that moment. And I say, first of all, it was in the sporting environment, but then really appreciating how all of those learnings and all of that experience was so applicable to every other end of my life, be it when I was doing finals at university, really tuning into the performance element of it, really feeling that pressure, feeling that feeling in your stomach when you wake up on those days, be it for a final exam or for the final at the Paralympic Games, and appreciating that that feeling was not only your friend, it was such a positive feeling, because without that, you're never going to perform. It's part of being human for the body to go, why are you doing this? But to feel that and go, no, that's good that that feeling's there. You need to have it because you're putting yourself out there to perform, to lead, inevitably and necessarily means that we have to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. And that's a real positive. And it's in many ways one of the most essential elements of leadership, to be vulnerable, to do something which, in the first instance, every sinew of our being is saying, do not do that, because you're putting yourself out there. But it's the only way to feel that vulnerability and to feel the trust of the community, the team, the group, the organisation, the business that you're in, to put yourself in that position and know that you can lead, and always leading as part of a team, as a group, as an organisation, because probably one of the greatest truths that I learned, again, very early on, there's no such thing as individual achievement. There's only shared success.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you're attributing much of your success to the collective, obviously yourself as well, but also the people around you. So a question about what defines you, and from a very young age, what sort of environment were you in that enabled you to flourish in that way? Or do you think it was just, there's the talk about nature versus nurture. There's billions of us on this planet, but we don't all want to feel uncomfortable or vulnerable. And actually, we would do anything to potentially avoid those situations. But by doing that, that's the risk, isn't it? Because you're avoiding living. But that certainly isn't the case with you, or has in your career or your life. So, where did that definition of you come from?
Very much so from supportive environments, family, friends, school, swim club, supportive, collaborative environments where the mission was clear and the support was clear. Even some of the most difficult circumstances, like obviously trying to get to university,
Yes,
that's a big gig for a blind person at that stage. Being able to swim alongside non-disabled swimmers in a regular swim club, that was a big deal then. All those things, but having that sense of other people who believed in me and supported me. So very much teachers and swim coaches in those two environments. Because again, not possible to achieve anything without all of that support. If people look at sport, maybe see the athletes on the start blocks in swimming or in athletics and think, well, that's quite clearly an individual sport. But there's no such thing, because I couldn't have even been on those start blocks without swim coach, strength coach, nutritionist, psychologist, friends, family, all of them playing a part, all of them leading at some stage of that, to enable me at that point to do the race. At that point, that doesn't make an individual sport, but when I was racing, that was just my time to lead the team at that point.
really wonderful to hear. So would you mind walking us through your own journey and perhaps noting some of those proud and happy moments, but also perhaps things that went wrong, but you learned from, that you think sharing with others could benefit them when they're at their darkest moments as well, where they need to, also leadership's about decision making and forks in the road, isn't it? So they're really helpful for us all to consider when we're at those times in our life, both happy and also maybe the lows.
Very much so. And I think what encapsulates that is it's all part of the journey. It's all part of the struggle. In sport, people may well see the gold medal performance, and that's wonderful. It's such an extraordinary feeling to have the gold medal put around my neck and have 10,000, 15,000 people sing our national anthem. That's a phenomenal moment.
Yes.
But that's just a point in the journey. There's no ultimate destinations. It's about the journey that we're all on. And that was built over thousands of elements, which can be conceived of as good, bad, hard, easy, but in reality, all parts of that journey. So, for example, when I went to my first international swim competition, it was a Junior European Championships. I felt prepared. I was ready for it. I swam the 100 meters. I finished. I touched. I'd come 28, which was not the goal that I had set when I went to that competition. Nevertheless, I come 28th. Now, at that point, you can conceive of that as failure. It was obviously incredibly tough. I didn't feel great about it. But I went back and I thought, what am I trying to achieve here? Do I just give up at this point? Or do I think, what will it take to potentially make the final, potentially make the podium? So I just analysed all of the information that I had available to me, considered what that would take over the next 5 years of training, put a plan together, and then brought it into being. But you have to, anything of any value, anything of any worth doesn't just fall into our hands, and it never will, and it never could, because it wouldn't be of any value if it did. It's all that struggle, that journey, and unbelievable low points. Imagine cold, dark January morning, very easy to imagine right now.
Definitely.
And for morning training, the alarm clock goes off at 4:30 a.m. Nothing at all. Exactly, nothing at all makes you want to get out of bed then. Nothing at all. And so the thought of having a goal of trying to win a gold medal, that won't get you out of bed at 4:30 in the morning on a cold, dark January morning. But what always got me out of bed was the thought that there were 20 other teammates all waking up, all feeling the same, but all knowing they had to be at training that morning. Their leadership role was to be at training, because if someone was having a bad day, it was our role to pull them through. Similarly, if I was having a bad day, it was someone else's leadership role to pull me through. And it's always that, the sense of the team, that collective, shared endeavour, that collective mission that always got me out of bed on those tough mornings. And at that stage of training, when you're writing hard training as well, it's tough. It feels sometimes that you're going backwards. You're really in the depths of it, but it's always that sense of the collective, that shared mission, everybody being committed and supportive of one another through those dark, difficult days.
Well, we see the edit, don't we? I think in everybody's lives, yours obviously included, but other people's lives, we always see, especially with social media these days, you only see the edited bits where it's all about the celebration. But the reality of life is, and certainly to make accomplishments like that, I'm sure lots of low moments, but to think that you've got people pulling you through and watching your back because they can see and they trust you, is what keeps us going and propels us forward.
Completely. We are fabulously connected by all sharing one wonderful truth, and that is the great good fortune of us all being born human.
So we focus on our journey in this new digital revolution that we're in, especially the pace at which it's moving at the moment, with artificial intelligence taking over from some of the chores that human beings have, done over the years, that pace of change and how we regulate and keep up with that pace of change and how society benefits from that pace of change as well. What sort of leadership skills do you feel we need in technology and fintech to actually be successful? And in the UK, for example, how do we bring those wonderful jobs into the economy through fintech? What are you seeing out there that excites you? But, what leadership do we need in order to galvanize that and propel it forward?
What always excites me, and I've had 3 calls this morning with founders of brilliant fintech businesses in this country, and it is always exciting, inspiring, and so energizing to talk with those founders, to hear their stories, to understand their motivations, what's got them to this stage, what they need to move forward, being able to help in a little way with just some tips, hints, a bit of mentoring, if I'd even dare to call it that, but being able to just give a little bit of help to all those fabulous founders that we have in this country. And that's really such an extraordinary opportunity collectively that we have in the UK. There is no shortage of brilliant founders, brilliant ideas, and brilliant fintech businesses being built. What we need is more commitment from government. We need more commitment from, should we say, more traditional parts of our society and economy to understand the opportunity here, and particularly to help with that build, with that scale, with support and all the wraparound that needs to go around those founders and those businesses at that stage. Because be in no doubt, the government understandably talk about growth, of course.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if we're going to have the sort of growth that we need, the most likely source of that is going to be fintech and the new technologies, not least artificial intelligence, blockchain, and all other associated and connected technologies. So the government needs to do a whole heap more to understand that opportunity and to plan for how all government departments and all executive agencies, non-departmental public bodies, all local authorities, what leadership role they can all play to both assist the founder-led transformation of the UK economy, but also the benefits that they can reap from that for the way they do, in quotes, their business. The benefits flow both ways, and that requires leadership on both sides. But nobody should be anything other than utterly energized by the opportunities and the ideas that these founders are coming out with to solve for problems that have often dogged our society, dogged our economy, and dogged individuals for decades. They're coming up with such smart solutions. Always the best solutions are the ones that are so beautifully simple, clear, understandable, and purposed to that particular problem at hand. So much more focus from all of us, frankly, needs to go into that, because the opportunities are immense, and it's understanding the total support, really, and what it needs to bring out to bear. So developing, nurturing our own talent, but how we attract overseas talent to come to the UK, to be part of this journey, to be part of this transformation. Because if we get this right, and we have to, we could have the economy, the society that we really need right now. And to give it its most obvious, immediate, and pressing example, it's only through the combination of these technologies, human-led always, technologies in our human hands. It's only through these human-led technologies that we can have the health service, the health system that we desperately need,
Yes.
education transformed, and real social mobility.
Yeah, I mean, at my company, our vision is to improve communications in fintech, because we believe financial technology helps the global population to thrive. And it's something that it's what drives me as well, but it's something that we've always been in the UK incredibly good at, and we have attracted the best talent from all over the globe to work in the City of London, in Canary Wharf, in those big towers that have hundreds of people in investment banking and other parts of the chain. But you're right, we're at a stage now where we have to re-grasp some of that opportunity, because there's other countries out there as well that are now also having a spotlight on fintech. I mean, I've just come back from Abu Dhabi and the Emirates, where there's a huge focus in the Middle East now on using fintech for GDP. And there's room for everybody, but I think that this leadership position that we have and have had, what's your advice in terms of how we continue to maintain and grow that? And what leadership do we need on both sides of the party, both from government and from the founders, to make that happen?
First and foremost, exactly to your point, to understand this is a competition. It is a competitive landscape, but perhaps separate to swimming, it's a competition where potentially everybody can win. What we're really talking about is the extent of and the type of that victory. It's brilliant what's happening in other centres around the world. You've rightly mentioned UAE. It's interesting what's happening in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Switzerland, and many other centres around the globe. But we have truly a unique opportunity in the UK because of our financial centre, because of our history, because of our times that critically put that together with the great good fortune of English common law, and we have a unique offer to make here. But there's no default right to any of this. It's a competitive landscape, and so it should be. We have to understand what that means to compete as leaders, what's required from each section. We've rightly mentioned business, we've mentioned government, we should rightly mention regulators and the role that they must play. They are part of this. It doesn't compromise their regulatory integrity to be part of this mission, part of this journey. We have great regulators and a good regulatory environment in this country, but they are part of this journey. They are part of what we're trying to achieve here. And there's good elements to be learned without doing a drag and drop at all, because each economy, each society is its own context and needs to be understood and regulated for in that, looking inward as well as internationally. But when we look at comparators such as the MAS in Singapore, HKMA in Hong Kong, and the Swiss regulator, also in UAE, as already mentioned, it's worth looking at the approach they're taking and how their regulators are positioned in those markets, in those economies. We have a real opportunity because our regulatory environment is very well understood. It's critical for our regulators to constantly be understanding what their leadership role is and how connected they are to our future success. And that doesn't mean in any sense being light touch regulation. It doesn't mean stepping away from regulation. It's a misnomer, I think, that people make, that you're either pro-regulation or you're pro-innovation. That's, to me, so far from the truth. The point is, pro-regulation, if it's right-sized regulation, is pro-innovation. And it's the job for regulation and regulators to hold innovation, consumer rights, citizen protection at the same time, and do right-sized regulation within that environment. And then the clarity and the certainty that comes from that leadership is good for innovation, good for inward investment, good for consumer, good for business, good for citizen. There's no mileage in suggesting that having no regulation or very light regulation is necessarily the way forward. What do businesses want? What is a mark of leadership in the regulatory space? Clarity, certainty, consistency. We do that, and we can do that very well in the UK.
Clarity, certainty, and consistency, it seems like a thread throughout your life. But innovation and regulation are disciplines that come together. You can be innovative with the regulation, which also enables growth and environments to flourish. And like you say, throughout history, there's been times where the UK has been very exceptional at that and actually have been able to lend that to the rest of the world as well, those skills, as well as that legal frameworks that, again, that we're second to none at and are wonderful examples of excellence.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that. Last year, we did the Electronic Trade Documents Act. Now, people might go, oh, why are you talking about that? It sounds a really dull title. But why I raise it is because I think it's the first time in the UK where we've legislated for the opportunities and the possibilities of these new technologies. So what that act does, it's very simple. It enables trade documents to be held in electronic format because that's enabled through the technology, currently blockchain, but can be different technologies. So the legislation that we put together is both technology neutral and, as a consequence of that, technology future-proofed. We're the first G7 nation to pass this legislation. And what it means is that paperless trade means that perfection of a trade deal, which before this point was taking between 10 to 14 days, can now be perfected in a matter of minutes. Economic benefit, environmental benefit, GDP benefit. And we led on that in the UK. We showed leadership on it, and we had the rest of the world coming to talk to us to be interested in how we went about that. Similarly, now we're just doing the Digital Assets Bill, similar piece of legislation to consider how, in English common law, we conceive of and consider digital assets. So it's entirely possible to legislate, to regulate for these new opportunities. And the way to do it is always that sense of human-led, understanding what the issue you're seeking to put these technologies to is, and then putting the right sized, right focused legislation and or regulation in place to enable, to empower, to unleash, to support that opportunity.
There are a couple of themes up that come through loud and clear from your accomplishment and career and journey. Is all around collaboration is crucial, and also the human side, remembering that ultimately we're all human, and generally speaking, most of us mean well and most of us have got good intentions at heart, even in moments of challenge or strife. So is there anything you would like to say to leaders or aspiring leaders, especially on the industry side? Is there anything else you would like to say to them, to say, we've got this baton now that we're going to take forward in this new world that we're in, this digitization of life, which is well and truly underway, but still has many challenges to overcome? What would you like to say to those leaders? What advice would you give them?
I'd say 3 things. Believe in yourselves, believe in what you're trying to achieve, in the mission, in the journey, in the business you're seeking to build. Crucial, believe in your team, in your colleagues, in all those people around you. And if you do those 3 things, you truly have the potential to lead and achieve such extraordinary human-led possibilities.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. This conversation has come at a time in my life as an individual where I couldn't tell you how poignant it is in terms of what I'm doing next, which I know is not why we're doing this, but I just want to say that it actually has made me really deeply think about some of my own behaviors and where I need to go next. And I'm very grateful for it. And I'm sure that the listeners are going to also enjoy this. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a real pleasure. I'd say to everybody listening, please do be in touch. We'd love to hear your stories. We'd love to hear your current challenges. We'd love to hear what you're getting involved with. Do please be in touch. Hit me up on LinkedIn at Lord Chris Holmes. I'd be delighted to hear from you. It's been a complete pleasure to chat.
I know we were just about to close the conversation, but I think an important question to ask you is, how can the industry help us all, I guess, because financial technology to me is the fourth utility. It touches everybody so important. So is there any specific initiatives that you're driving at the moment where you think the industry could help you, perhaps not you, but us as a collective solve?
Surely. And what I'd really love if people can share their insights, share their intel. If they've come across a particularly interesting piece of research or report or something they've learned from their individual business, to share that with me would be fantastic. I think for all of us to just try and gather as much thought, experience and knowledge as possible, to put that into the mix, to try and ensure that we're optimizing what government needs to do, the legislative landscape, the regulatory landscape, and putting everything in place to enable, to empower people to lead and achieve their goals, the mission that they've set.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris.
Complete pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did. I learned so much from it. I love this conversation specifically because we talked a lot about the human side of leadership, and also how there's the edits in life, the leader that you see, the moments, the pinnacle moments where Chris won those gold medals, but there was those mornings where he had to get up every day at 4:30 a.m, but did it for his team. If you want to get in touch with either myself or Chris, we're both very interested in talking to you. And please share the podcast, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and we will put all the links in the details so that you can do that.
Starting your own podcast? From concept to production and launch, Sky Parlour Productions can bring your vision to life. Contact info at skyparlour.com today to get started.